Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2026. My name is Nicole Morin Scribner. I am a volunteer with the Biddeford Cultural and Historical Center, and I am conducting this interview at the J.R. Martin Community Center in Biddeford. And today I have the honor of interviewing William Hopkins, so you go by either William or Bill?
Either way.
Either way is fine? Okay. So I usually start these interviews right at the beginning by asking you what year and where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, Coney Island Hospital, March 30th, 1951.
Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York. So let's see let me back up a little bit. So tell me, we'll talk about your parents, because obviously they're part of the beginning of your story. So what is your father's name and where was he from?
My father was Roger Hopkins, and he was from England.
Now, did he share much about how he got from England to the United States?
Not really. He didn't share much about a lot of things. He was kind of a mysterious guy. My mother was Priscilla Veer. She was from here. My grandparents hailed from Canada. My grandfather, her father, was from Thetford Mines, and her mother was from I believe she was from Quebec, my grandmother. I had the pleasure of knowing, on my mother's side, I never knew any family from my father's side, but I had the pleasure of knowing both my grandparents and great-grandparents on my mother's side. So that was interesting as I was younger, to be able to have all of that.
Now, how do you spell her last name?
V-I-R.
Really?
They dropped the V, the E, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that's, I know you had told me that name before, and that was one that was unknown to me, especially...
Well, a lot of people had problems with the pronunciation. They would call it Ver instead of Veer, but it was Veer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your mother's family came from Quebec, and
they came from Canada.
And they came to Biddeford?
To Biddeford, yes. Well, we lived in my life, except for D.C., I've lived on almost every state on the East Coast.
Wow.
Everyone.
Huh.
Yeah.
Was that so let me just ask you this question, and we'll go through all of that. But so your mother was born in Biddeford?
No, I'm not sure of that. But I believe yes.
Uh-huh.
She was. I believe they were all born here.
Okay, so if she's from Biddeford and your father was from...
My birth certificate says he was from England.
Okay. Do you know how they met?
Yeah, actually. I grew up in carnivals and circuses most of my younger years. My dad booked himself out. He ate fire. He laid on a Hindu board of nails and let two men from the audience weighing up to 600 pounds between them stand on his chest while he was on this board of nails. He drove a 20-penny spike through his nasal passage. He took long ladies' hat pins through the throat, through the arm. He was a mind reader, handwriting. He would do handwriting analysis, fortune telling. He made potions. He was a different type of person. And my mother's family went to the show, to the carnival, and they saw his show, and he used to, as a joke, he used to say, his girlfriend said he had hot lips, and if anybody wanted free demonstrations to meet him backstage, she went. When they got married, he was 50. She was 19. I'm the eldest of 8. There was 8 of us. I grew up with 7. My dad used to do a disappearing act from time to time. And after myself and my sister, who is 1 year younger than I am, came my brother. And at that point, Dad had done one of his disappearing acts. And my grandparents, being the old French people that they were, convinced my mother that she had enough kids with the 2 of us by herself, that she should give the other boy or other child for adoption, which she did. There went my brother Bob. And then I have 4 sisters, and I had 2 other brothers. So growing up, I was the eldest of 7. Although I didn't live with my family the whole time, my mother's older brother, Norman, who was 15 years in the Air Force Police, was my godfather. And she gave me up to him at one point in my life when I was younger, and him and my aunt raised me for a certain amount of time, and then I came back home. And I went in the military. I went to Biddeford Junior High School. I played with the marching band. I wasn't a great student. My mind used to wander. And I graduated from the 7th to the 8th grade, but I didn't go. I joined the Job Corps and went off to Edinburgh, Indiana, where I took 5 months of baker's training. I wanted to be a chef. I knew that when I was very young, and I went off to do that, but they screwed up the paperwork, and I wound up in 5 months of baker's training. But I figured, if I'm going to be a chef, I need to know this anyway, so I stayed. Then when I came back, I went to Hartford, Connecticut for a year. I was 15 at the time, 16 at the time. And I lived with my aunt Yvonne, my mother's sister, and her family. And I worked in King's department store. I went to take a job as a stock boy because I needed to work while I was there. I wasn't, I was on my own pretty much. And they asked me if I had any dress clothes, and I said, well, sure. I didn't at the time, but I went and got some. And I thought, gee, I have to dress up for a stock boy. I didn't realize they hired me as a floor manager. I had 4 departments. And I had 12 girls working under me in these departments. So at 16 years old, I had an office in the back of the store over the storeroom with a big 2-way mirror in front of my desk, so I could see in, but out, but nobody could see in, and I could watch the whole store that way. Well, having never done that before, I didn't know that, how casual department stores were, but I had all my girls. If you came into one of my departments, they would approach you like if you were going into a higher class store, and they would ask you, can I help you? And it wasn't like you were wandering around in Walmart. You were being taken care of. And they took a fancy to that because I guess nobody had ever worked that way before. I was in King's department store. And when I left, when I was 17, or almost 17, I left, and I got called up to the general manager's office. I thought I was in trouble. And he practically begged me to stay. He says, I'll transfer you anywhere you want to go. We've never had an employee like that before, So I declined because I was coming back to Maine. I was coming home
So that King's Department Store you said was where?
in Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
Hartford, Connecticut. Yeah. And I joined the military at 17.
Okay. Now, I definitely want to hear about that part of your life, but I want to go back and hear some more about your childhood because it sounds like it was very, very different. So, what do you remember? What was life like on the road? You were on the road?
We were on the road. At one point, we always had the sideshow was my father's main thing. We always had the sideshow because that's what he did, and he was also an illusionist. Two of my aunts were the four-legged girl. One of my aunts was the bodiless woman. One of my aunts was the alligator skin girl. My mom was Miss Electra. She would stand on a plate and let electricity pass through her body, and he would hold up fluorescent tubes and screw light bulbs into her palm, and they would light up. And every morning, he would give me a 50-cent piece for the day, and of course, I would always be at the Bally when he did his pitch. Now, the Bally is that little stage outside on the fairground that they would give their pitch. Hey, come on in. What you see inside will amaze and amuse you. That type of a pitch, And he would always ask for a volunteer when my mother was doing the Miss Electra routine. And of course, how about you, young man? Step right up here. And, do you have any coinage on you? Well, of course, I had a 50-cent piece in my pocket. He gave it to me. So I would render the 50-cent piece to my dad. He would touch the coin. He would give her one end of the fluorescent tube, the same that we have overhead here, and then he would take the coin and hit the other end, and it would light up. All right, because he created a connection there. And at the end of the routine, he would always put the 50-cent piece back in his pocket. And it was, hey, what about my 50 cents? Go away, son, you bother me. It was that kind of a thing, And I often wondered how many times I got that same 50-cent piece every day.
Wow. So, was this part of a bigger circus?
Yes,
was it
yes,
just
it
your
was. No,
family?
it was part of a bigger circus. We were with a number of shows that traveled up and down the East Coast, growing up in the carnival. I mean, the Midway was my playground. I had access to all the rides, all the food joints, all the shows. I mean. Of course, my favorite was always the rock and roll show. I used to hang out because they had bands that played and everything. People got up and danced, when I was, I guess I must have been about 6 years old. We lived in Old Orchard Beach, and there used to be a theater in Old Orchard Beach. I don't know how many people know that, but there used to be a movie theater in Old Orchard, and we lived on Milligan Street. And my mother took me to see Love Me Tender. Well, I saw this guy on the big screen playing guitar and singing, and that was it. I was hooked. I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a singer, And so, in the shows, I always used to like to hang around the rock and roll show. But we had a trailer at one point that had like the world's largest lobster, electric eel. You would pay. I think it was 10 cents to go in one end of the trailer and you'd come out the other, and then we had tanks on both sides that you could, and then we had a big fenced-in area, not a big fence, just a small fence, you could step over it, and we had the world's largest sea turtle, and we used to charge extra for the kids to ride on the turtle shell, to ride on his back, and my Uncle Norman, he had the carousel. My grandmother had food joints. We had various games and concessions over the years. But yeah, we always travel with other people.
Now, what was the name of the, yes, I know that one of the things that you have are some pictures. So one of the things that we do, and I will include in this, are some pictures that you're going to be sharing with me. Those are great. What was the name of the circus? Do you remember the company?
We travel with, I'm trying to see if there are any names on any of these tents anywhere, but we travel with, I know, Fun Time Circuses. We travel with the White Brothers shows. There was a lot of different shows. This was 1954.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to include some of the pictures in this
Yeah, there's some great
project.
pictures in here. We traveled, some of the people I've met in my life, like Gabby Hayes. Do you know who Gabby Hayes is? Fuzzy Q. Jones. Do you remember any old Gene Autry movies?
I'm
Do
familiar
you
with the
remember
name
the guy
Gene
with the
Autry,
beard, with the hat that was turned up, that was his sidekick? He used to roll cigarettes with one hand. That was Fuzzy Q. Jones, Gabby Hayes.
Okay.
And we traveled with him for a while, him and his wife. And it was at that point, it was just my dad, my sister, and I, and everybody else was back in Maine. And we were traveling from Savannah, Georgia, and of course my dad never did any traveling in the summertime without hooking up with the shows. That's when we hooked up with the White Brothers shows. And then when we left them, we went with Fuzzy Q and his wife. And they set up a tent. Fuzzy Q would do his routine, my dad would do his routine, and they would charge for that. And that man, Fuzzy Q. Jones, he used to show Gene Autry movies. He used to roll the cigarette with one hand. He used to do gun tricks, and he told the worst jokes in the world. For example, what's the definition of a skunk?
I don't know.
A streamlined cat with fluid drive.
So, is
Well,
it
yeah,
just in
you
the
can't
summertime?
you couldn't travel in the winter. In the winter, we either came here
Okay.
or we wintered in Florida, in Miami, and Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, when did you, what was school like? What did you do for school?
Didn't do school back then.
When you were, when you were like elementary age.
Well, no, by then we would stay here and go to school. I went to school here in Biddeford.
You did go to school here in
From
Biddeford.
kindergarten through the 7th grade, I went to school here.
Oh, okay.
Then when I got out of the military, as I said, I went in the military at 17. But when I got out of the military, I lived in Old Orchard. I got married when I was 21. My wife was 18. And I didn't want to get a GED, so I went back to school for 4 years at night in Old Orchard and got my high school diploma from there.
Uh-huh. Because let's see, so you went to elementary school in the Biddeford school
Yep, I
system?
started at Washington Street School and Washington Street, Emory Street School.
Uh-huh.
What's that other one there was... I'm trying to think what was off of Green Street. It was over in that section, what that school was. I can't remember that.
Yeah. Now,
Main Street.
did your father have, is this the only work that he did, was the circus?
No, when he was here, he did regular jobs. For example, there used to be Zaitlin's Junkyard, used to be in on Lincoln Street in Saco.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looking for a job. They were hiring. They were looking for a welder. So he went and told them he was a welder, and he got the job. He was not a welder. He went to a friend of his that was a welder. And he said, do me a favor, give me today and teach me everything you can teach me about welding. And he did. And my dad went back and was a welder there for a couple of years, just from what he learned in that day from his friend. he worked for Ed and Frank's, which at the time was where Portland Glass is now. And when he was there, he was putting flags up around the window for a sale that they were getting to have. And he was on a stepladder, and it slipped away, and he went through the plate glass window and broke both of his arms. And he got messed up pretty good. He didn't work much after that. We had we always had the snake pit as well, and he would get in the snake pit full of snakes, and he would demonstrate and do his thing in there. And interesting story about that after. He put the snake pit in Orchard Beach for a few years. We used to be right at the, where the coal mine is. We were at the end of the pier. Do you remember the coal mine? Are you from around here?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I grew up here, yeah.
Do you remember what Orchard Beach used to be like in the 50s and early 60s?
With the pier, the merry-go-round.
Yeah, the
Noah's
merry-go-round,
Ark.
the Noah's Ark, and underneath the Noah's Ark was the coal mine.
Oh, with the donkeys.
With the donkeys, exactly. Well, just on the left of that, my dad had his snake pit. And then the following year, he moved it across the street next to the glass house, the fun house. That was where I believe his name was Charlie. He used to guess your weight. And so, he would do things like that. He did some shows around town. He did some shows for the kids at St. Mary's and this and that. He always did the portrait. People used to call him on the phone from out of state, or they would send him letters, and he would do handwriting analysis and tell fortunes, and he would send them potions and stuff like that. So he made his money that way. He always figured out a way to make money. Of course, we had a very large family, and for the time that he couldn't work, my mother, she didn't work a lot. She worked, she worked at Wormwoods for a while. My aunt lived in Camp Alice. If you remember Camp Alice, there's Wormwoods, and then there was a couple houses past that, and there was a little red house all the way at the end on the same side as Wormwood. If you went around the back, they called it the Jetty Takeout. She used to sell fast food out of the hamburgers, french fries, onion rings, that kind of stuff. So, but my mom worked for Wormwoods for a while. My uncle owned the Puritan, or the Mayflower, I'm sorry, for a while. And I think she worked there for him. And the Colonial, but this was later on in years that she had these jobs. So she didn't really work a lot. So we had to go in the state for a while. And I remember as a kid, if you remember, the state used to pass food out. And I used to have to go once a month to the town hall, which is where you got the welfare food. And my dad got me a red wagon to go pick it up, because I'd have to make a couple of trips. There was so many of us in the family. We had a ton of stuff, And that was kind of annoying. It was kind of embarrassing, but we didn't have a choice. You know what I mean? Back then, times were tough for everybody. We're back in the 50s now, in the early 60s. Well, mostly in the mid to late 50s.
Before we move on to something else, you mentioned earlier that you had a story about the snake pit. So first of all, tell me about what the snake pit was.
Well, the snake pit was a large den of snakes that my father used to get in and talk about all the snakes and handle them. And
what kind of snakes were
oh,
they?
there was everything from rattlesnakes to boa constrictors.
Okay.
And he had bites all up and down his arm. I've only been bitten once, but a funny little story. he didn't always have the snake bit. My grandfather had it for a time. He had it. And in one show, there was a young man that had it, and he got drafted into the military. So my dad bought his entire show for a very small amount of money. The pit, the snakes, the chicks to feed them, the PA system, the bally, which was the platform outside to draw the crowd. And he took me downtown and got me suited up with a full Western outfit. And I would stand on the bally and I would say, hey, hey, and I'd have a boa constrictor around my neck. Hey, my name is Alkali Bill. My father is the snake king of Texas. Inside I have deadly reptiles from all over the world. No one can handle these snakes but me. Well, one day, I used to draw them in. I was just a little kid, people were fascinated with that. And one day I got up and gave my pitch, and the whole crowd started to roar. And I said, what the heck? So I started the whole pitch over again. Hey, my name is Alkali Bill. My father is the snake king of Texas. Inside I have deadly reptiles from all over the world. No one can handle these snakes but me. And they laughed twice as hard. Well, I turned around and my sister, a year younger than myself, had two of my biggest snakes around her neck. So that was that for me. We traded that in for a penny pitch. I didn't want to do that anymore. So that's the funny story about the snake pit.
Now, you said your mother's side of the family and you were close to your grandparents. So your grandparents lived in Biddeford as well?
Everybody lived in Biddeford, yeah.
Now, did they speak French?
Oh, yes. Oh, boy, yeah. My mother had all these old aunts that used to come by the house frequently, and my dad used to terrify these women. It was so funny. But they'd come in and they'd all start talking French, and he'd lose his mind, because it's like he couldn't understand what they were saying. She started to teach us kids French, and he forbade it. He says, listen, it's bad enough I got to put up with this shit from your family. I'm not going to keep it from my own kids, So she had to stop teaching us French. So consequently, we only learned the wrong words for the most part.
Now, do you remember any special traditions in your family, like especially
my
around the
family
holidays?
was a very tight-knit family. Of course, my grandparents were, one, they didn't believe in friends, my grandparents. They believed in family, period. And it was the kind of thing, if there was a function, a wedding, a funeral, anything of that sort, family would come from everywhere. I had family in Augusta. My Uncle Paul, my grandmother's brother, and his family was in Augusta. I have an aunt that was a sister. She was from, by that I mean a nun. She was in a convent in Vermont. I had family in Connecticut. I mean, they came from everywhere. And family functions back then was a big event. Christmas holidays were a big event. Right up to the time that they started passing away, the seniors, they're all gone now. All that's left is us kids. But my uncle had a big house on Washington Street in Orchard Beach. And everybody would congregate there. He was like the hub of the family. And we used to call it the big house. We went to the big house. And on Christmas time, we would meet there, and the women would cook, and we rented this big horse-drawn carriage that we'd make hot chocolate. Everybody would grab the hot chocolate, pile into the carriage, and it would take us around the neighborhood, and we would sing carols. And then when we got back to the house, the food was prepared. We'd party up a little bit at a certain time. We'd do Christmas, and then everybody would go home. Thanksgiving, I remember having as much as 4 Thanksgiving dinners after I was married. I would do Thanksgiving dinner at the big house. I would do Thanksgiving dinner at my mother's house. I would do Thanksgiving dinner at my mother-in-law's house. And then our Thanksgiving, it was like enough. I didn't want to see turkey again for the rest of the year. But it was cool. I missed that. I missed the family.
Uh-huh.
You know, we were so close. Now, as I said, it's just the siblings, and everybody's spread out. I've got cousins in Wyoming. I've got cousins up north. I've got cousins in Connecticut. I've got cousins in Florida. I've got brothers and sisters in Florida and Pennsylvania and Maryland. Funny story about my brother Bob, the one I told you that was put out for adoption. I had my own business. I had a contracting business that was doing very well, but I got tired of it. I wanted to go back into the culinary field. I cooked in the Army when I was in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a job at Danny's Deli as an apprentice. He sent me the SNVTI. I left Danny's Deli a chef. So when I was there, I had a waitress from Maryland. And she said, hey, they used to call me chef. She said, hey, chef. She said, do you have a brother in Maryland? I think he's a photographer or something. And I said, nope, no brothers in Maryland. She said, well, you got a doppelganger there. I said, cool. Everybody has a doppelganger somewhere, I believe. Well, when my brother Bob, his wife worked at the town hall there, and she found his original birth certificate. So he decided to contact all of the Veers and the Hopkins in this area. One of his letters landed at my Uncle Norman's doorstep. He contacted my mother. She contacted my brother, and we reunited. At the time, I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I had two sisters and another brother that were there in Pittsburgh. So we all caravanned back here to meet our brother. And when he came in, man, it was like looking in the mirror. I mean, it floored me.
Wow.
And when my mother introduced me, she said, "This is who you look like." and my mind went back to that question at Danny's Deli. Well, as it turned out, my brother is a photographer, and he travels all over the globe taking pictures, and he sells them as art, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine that this waitress at some point had come across, because he used to put his work in shows and galleries, and I imagine she must have come across some of his stuff, and she just put our faces together.
Interesting. So it must definitely be a resemblance.
Yeah, I thought, that's it's uncanny how that works.
Yeah.
There was a connection there way before we realized.
Uh-huh.
So it was meant to be that we.
There you make that reconnected again.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I do in preparation for these interviews is the Biddeford Cultural Center has a subscription to what's called newspaperarchives.com, so I can go back.
You were telling me, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw when I was researching that, and your family's name came up, is where you were living, there was a house fire?
Dad.
So there was a house fire?
Washington Street.
Yeah. Now you would have been, I think you would have been were you a teenager at that time?
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet? What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember smelling something burning. Now, back in the day, rent was so cheap. This was a 3-story house, apartment downstairs, first floor, second floor. Top floor was weird. It was just it was just 3 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
None of which was a kitchen or a bathroom, or it was more like a storage area or a couple extra bedrooms, 2 of them big rooms, 1 room was very small. But my dad would rent everything. For example, we lived in a duplex in Saco later on, and it was side by side. He rented both sides. That's how he didn't like people around him, so he just rented everything. Because you get a 4-bedroom apartment back then for about $12 or $14 a month, you know. So I remember smelling something burning, and we weren't sure where it was coming from. They looked and they couldn't figure it out. It came from the shed. The fire started in the shed. And when the firemen came, although it didn't spread through the house, they did so much damage to everything, we had to move. Most of the damage was in the shed and the kitchen, which was closest to the shed. And it was a shame because, I mean, we had antiques in the house that was just, the bottom apartment was my grandparents' apartment. We lived upstairs. They used to switch back and forth from time to time just to be in some place new, I guess. I don't know. But they did so much water damage that we had to move. And we moved to Alfred Street at the time. There used to be a big 4-story tenement building right there on the corner. Now I believe it's an insurance company or bank or something. I don't know. But it's directly across from the post office.
Was the fire in the daytime?
The fire was in the daytime. Yes, the fire was in the daytime. Yeah.
Well, that must have been a big shocker.
Yeah, it was.
A big adjustment you had to.
It was a very big adjustment.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, where your father must have had a lot of, maybe there's a better term for it, but like props and everything for the work that he did, or was he still doing that work at the time?
Well, yeah, he was doing shows around town from time to time.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, no, he wasn't, he didn't keep a lot. He kept his, but he didn't care, that stuff didn't faze him. I mean, if he lost a nail board, he'd build another one.
Oh.
I mean, he made all his own stuff, so it, for example, in one of those rooms on the 3rd floor I was telling you about, they had big sheets of plywood, him and my grandfather, and they had painted the plywood and cut holes. They were building a game. It was the face of Deputy Dog, and they cut holes where the mouth was, and it was a ball game. You had to try to throw the ball in the hole, you know what I mean? But that never surfaced because it all got destroyed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had his stuff at one point after I was married, but I got rid of it, and I've been cursed by my brothers and sisters since because I got rid of Dad's nail board and his torches for eating fire. And kids, I had it in a little shed outside the apartment I lived in. There was a shed with an oil barrel for the stove and the heater, and kids used to get in there and play with it, and this thing was getting all rusted, and I said to my wife, as much as I hate to do it, it's dangerous, I hate to see these kids get hurt trying to mess with this thing, so I got rid of it. But what I should have done was had a table built and put it under glass, and preserved it.
Now, did he, and did you have any interest in learning how to do
No,
the
my
things
mom
he
forbade
did?
it. My mom forbade it. She wouldn't allow him to teach us anything.
Uh-huh.
I mean, when he would put the pins in his arm, long ladies' hat pins that they used to have back in the day, I still have one or two. I have one in my hat that when I wear for shows and stuff. And he would take it. He would say to the audience, "Now, do you want to see blood or no blood?" And if they said blood, he would take the pin out, and one drop would trickle down, And if they said no blood, he would flex a little bit, and no blood would come out.
Where did he learn how to do all that stuff?
He claimed he learned in India, traveling through the Far East, Now, as we grew older and we started, as I said, we never knew any of his family. There were people that we met that he claimed, like we met a gentleman back in the 50s in North Carolina, North or South Carolina. His name was Doc Rice. Sported a goatee. He was a sign painter, billboards. Back in the day, these billboards that you would see on the side of the road, a lot of them were hand painted. They weren't like today. They go out and they roll it up and, back then they were hand painted, and that's what he did for a living. And he drove an old DeSoto with the paint pretty much rusted off of it. And always dress pants that were very shiny, and a white shirt, and silk tie that was always stained because he chewed tobacco, and he would get it on his clothes. Doc was a character right out of a book. It was interesting to know him. It was couldn't stand his wife. She was a miserable. Had 2 daughters, beautiful girls. They played with my sister Tiger. They weren't allowed to play with us. We stayed there, I guess for close to a couple of weeks, and he had 4 old cars in his yard. And there was an outhouse and a screened-in back porch. We stayed in those cars. We were allowed to use the outhouse. We weren't allowed in the house. We weren't allowed to play with the girls, although my sister did. We took our meals on the back porch. My amusement for the day, I would wake up in the morning, him and Doc and my sister would be gone. And I would be there alone for the day, and my amusement was I had a pencil, and I had some cedar shake, cedar planks, and I would draw on the cedar, and that's what I would do to entertain myself in these hot cars.
Now, how old were you at that
time? I guess I had to be probably, maybe 7 or 8 years old, something like that. Yeah.
And what was this man's connection to your...
He claimed it was his brother.
Oh, okay.
But we can't know that for sure.
Uh-huh.
When some of my brothers and sisters got into the genealogy, this thing on the internet here that you can track down your family, it turned up that he was not from England, although that's what my birth certificate says, and it says he was an actor. And they claim that they found out he was from Jamestown, Virginia.
Wow, fascinating. And do you know, so you said he was in India, so he had traveled around the world based on what he told you?
Yeah, he was a well-traveled man.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, and he did a lot of things. And he was an actor for a while.
Uh-huh.
And he used to do the human mannequin where he would...
Just freeze.
Just freeze.
Uh-huh.
You couldn't see him breathe, never blinked an eye.
Huh.
He also did a buried alive act where he would stay down for, a week to 30 days. And they would actually bury him in the ground. He had a tube at each end that would go up so he had air that circulated. Screens that protected anybody throwing shit down on him, pardon my French. And he did that for a while. From time to time, he did that act.
Wow.
Growing up on the carnival, like I said, the fairground that was our playground. That was our yard. That was our playground. You know, it was amazing, and the people were amazing. There was gypsies. There was roustabouts. There was showmen. There were people who owned rides. People who just owned food concessions. You know, and I could eat at any food concession for free. I went on all the rides for free. You know. What a way to grow up, you know what I mean? It was just amazing.
So what was
Are
it?
you familiar with? Are you familiar with? He was a world famous hobo clown. Here he is.
Oh, huh.
You see paintings of him everywhere, and
Uh-huh.
statues.
Right.
Why can't I remember his name?
I'm sure we can look it up and add it to the information that we have. Huh.
But we traveled with him.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I'm not sure of your age. I'm not going to ask. But back in the day, we had Howdy Doody on television. Do you remember Howdy Doody? Okay, on Howdy Doody, from time to time, they would have a guy who had a little monkey. His name was Zippy the Chimp, and they used to have Zippy dolls everywhere. Zippy came on a little cowboy outfit. We used to babysit Zippy the Chimp. There might be some pictures of him in here with my aunt and my cousin. But we traveled with them. We traveled with just amazing people, you know, that I have had the pleasure of growing up with in my life.
So what was it like when you would go from that to reintegrating with what, your neighborhood
With
friends in Biddeford?
with normal people. Well, we you know, I was that kid, and the first thing I'm going to say about that is there was something in me that didn't allow me to want to hurt people. So fighting was not in my
Nature.
it was not in my nature. It was not in my wheelhouse to want to have after school scraps until later on, when I got tired of being beat up and running home. I got to be very fast, very, very fast. In fact, when I lived with my Uncle Norman, we lived in Savannah, and we got transferred to New Jersey, where I joined for the first time in my life the football team and the track team, and I never came home. The only time I ever came home, and I was talking to my son about this earlier, the only time I ever came home with a second place ribbon was when I was in a relay race, and that wasn't just me, it was other people I had to depend on. But if I was running a 50-yard or 100-yard, first place. But that's from running to get home safe after school so many times. So I was that kid, and I was very skinny, and I was very timid. I spent a lot of time alone when I was young. I was that kid that everybody wanted to beat up because they thought they could. Now my sister Tiger, she would go scrap with them. If they bothered me, they had to answer her. You know, it's almost embarrassing to say that, but it's the way it was. You know.
So you went to, so I know that you had said you went to elementary school, you were in junior high, but then when it came time for high school,
I was in the military.
so you volunteered?
I volunteered. I had to get my parents to sign the papers.
Because how old were you?
I was 17 years old when I joined the Army.
Why did you, what was
Why
the impetus there?
Why did I join the Army? I joined the Army because I was hanging out in the streets of Biddeford. Now, Biddeford was a great place to grow up. Okay, I don't know if you grew up here, but Biddeford was an amazing place to grow up. Biddeford used to be a wonderful city. We had everything you could possibly imagine. We had Charlie the Tailor. We had the cobbler up by the library. We had the library. We had everything from Dutch boy paint stores. IGA was in Biddeford, where the old Parters was. We had Murphy's Music. You could go into Murphy's and you can listen to records, or you could go into a booth and make your own recordings. You know, we had 4 or 5 men's shops. You know, I mean, we had everything. You know, we had the Puritan, we had the Mayflower, we had Alex's, we had Louis', we had Joe's Donut, we had Riley's Bakery. We used to go to Riley's when we were kids. You could go into Riley's on Friday. They used to have what we called crumbs, and you could get a bag of broken pastries for 10 cents. On Friday afternoon, we would go to St. Joseph's, to the back to the convents where the nuns were, and you could get a big paper shopping bag full of, when they made the host, the cutouts from the host, for a dime. You could get a bag full. My mother used to send us there every Friday. She loved that, you know. And us kids loved it, you know. Back then, I mean, you could go to a number of stores that sold penny candy, like where the bus station was on Elm Street. There's a little red store on the corner of Elm and Cott Street. Used to sell penny candy in the window, and Jesus, for a dime, you could fill a bag of penny candy. You know, because you buy 3 for a penny, 2 for a penny, 4 for a penny. You know, you come back and share it with all your friends. You know, and then on Saturday it was the Central Theater, and going to the movies back then was not just going to the movies. Going to the movies was an event. You went in the morning, all right, and for 50 cents you get into the movies. You could buy popcorn, soda, candy bars, you know, one of those ice creams that were flat, that, you know, and still go home with it, you know, a nickel or a dime. You know, you'd still have change, but you'd see. What we used to call them, matinettes or something like that. Yeah, the matinee. It was like they had the news, then they had a couple of cartoons, then it was like the Three Stooges or Laurel and Hardy or Abbott and Costello or something like that, and then you'd see the first movie, and then you'd have an intermission, and come back and they do the same thing, and then you see the second movie. You didn't get out of there till it was time to go home for dinner. So they'd send us kids to the movies, and they knew all day Saturday we were at the movies. They didn't have to worry about us at all. And then on Sunday, we would go to the City Theater. Now, when we got a little bit older, the City Theater was Makeout Central. That's where you brought your girlfriend, and you made out all afternoon. You didn't really care about the movie. You know? I can't even begin to imagine what went on in that balcony.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Again, at some point you decided you wanted to sign up to go.
Well, I was just banging around the streets of Biddeford. Of course, by then I was a teenager, and I had a friend, Ray Labby, whose dad used to own Eddie's Taxi in Biddeford. We met at one of the dances at St. Joseph's at Parish Hall, actually. You know, we used to walk around in circles, you know. And he was standing at one end, and as I walked by him, he said, "Boy, you're kind of a punk, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, so what? You want to do something about it? Step up, buddy." You know, because by that time, my attitude about fighting has changed. I got tired of running home, and I got tired of being beat up. And I had started hanging out with the Water Street gang. I don't know if you're familiar with them back in the day. Quite a large group of guys. And I'll tell you how that came about eventually. But we just, after that, he laughed, and we shook hands, and we became lifelong friends. I talk to him every day. He lives in North Carolina now. I stood up for him at his wedding. Uh, so uh, he was in the military, and he happened to be home on leave, and he said, "What are you doing, man? You're just kicking around here, not." He said, "You're gonna wind up in trouble." I said, "Well, I got nothing to do, you know. I got." So he said, "Well, why don't you come in the military? You know, it'll do you a world of good." So I did. You know, he got an extra 30-day leave for talking me into going in, and we got to hang out for another 30 days. And then I went in. I went to basic training at Fort Dix. I went to AIT, which was Advanced Infantry Training at Fort Dix. I thought, sure, I was going right to Vietnam after that. As it happened, I went to Germany. I went to, Berbergen, Germany, just outside of Stuttgart. It was Brommel's old headquarters, Panzerkonzern. And I was with the 396 Transportation Company. We delivered supplies and ammo to, the other military installations in Germany, and for both the Air Force and the Army. So I traveled around Germany quite a bit, and then I took a job in the mess hall. And they levied me with 18 months left to go in the military to Vietnam. Well, we were getting hit every other day anyway. We had incoming, and we had foot soldiers coming over the fences and stuff. In fact, I caught a guy out of the back of the mess hall one day pacing off the camp. I grabbed him by the nape of the neck and the butt of his pants and marched him down to headquarters. So I said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care where you send me. You can send me to hell. I don't care. I'm not doing it. I'm no snitch, you know. And he said, "You're out of here, buddy." I said, "Fine. Do what you have to do, man." And that week, I got called into the office, and they said, "Pack your stuff. You're going home. Your dad is in the hospital, and they don't think he's going to make it." So I got sent home on emergency leave. I came back, and I walked in the house, and there was my dad sitting in the living room watching television. And I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he said, "No, what the hell are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, they sent me home on emergency leave. They told me you were in the hospital dying." He said, "Do I look like I'm in the hospital dying?" I said, "No." So that week, we were sitting there watching the news one night at dinner time, and it came over the news that my company in Vietnam got completely leveled to the ground. Completely wiped out. I was supposed to be there. So it was like, damn, I must have a guardian angel sitting on my shoulder. There was no reason for me to come home on emergency leave. And I should have been there with the rest of the guys when they got wiped out. I got sent home. Wasn't my time, I guess. I was on the phone making a bunch of phone calls trying to find out who made it back and who didn't, out of my little black book. So that was my experience with the military.
So they didn't have you go back after that?
No, I didn't go back after that. I only had about 5 months left to go. And I've already been over there for about a year or so. And they were doing a special thing in the Army at the time where anybody who came home with 5 months or less was getting an early out. And I fell into that criteria, and I got an early out.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't receive any back pay or anything because I also, before going to Vietnam, I had to leave from Seattle, Washington. And I had a friend here, my sister's brother-in-law, him and his wife had come here from California. They had a little place at the beach, and I stayed with them for a while. And his wife wanted to go home in the worst way. Her family was Mormons, and they didn't have the money to go. Well, from this thing that I was doing in Germany, I had a friend from Indiana who owed me a shitload of money, and he called me up and wanted me to make a deal for him. He sent me $5,000, which back then was a lot of money. So he owed me about 3 times that much. So I took the $5,000 and I took my friend and his wife and 2 sons back to California. So I extended my leave a little bit, and I went and lived in La Puente for a while in the Los Angeles area. And then I went to Seattle, and I met some people in Seattle at a place called the Last Taxi Exit that had a commune. And I'd never done that before, so I wanted to do that and experience that. So I took a little more leave time, and I went and lived in a commune for a little bit. The women all stayed home and cooked and sewed clothes and what have you. And all the men, we did installed ceilings and stuff, you know. And then I finally went back to base, and I finally went off to Vietnam. So they busted me, and any money that I had coming to me was consumed by the military. I never got it.
So, I'm not clear. Did they send you back to Vietnam?
No.
No.
When
Okay.
I came home on emergency leave, I never went back to
That's
Vietnam.
what I thought you said.
And had they sent me back, I mean, the base was
Right,
gone now.
right. Yeah.
My whole company was completely
Yeah. So how long were you in Vietnam?
about a year or so.
About a year.
Yeah.
So did you end up being on the front line for a while?
No, I don't talk
No?
about any of that.
Yeah, yeah,
don't
and
wanna
and I
I don't want to
and
talk about
and
Vietnam.
and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I've said all I have to say about that.
Okay, I respect that.
I have a poem here that
Yeah, I respect that.
pretty much tells it like it is.
I respect that. And this is something too, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine too. I mean, we often hear, you know, what was the reception when you, as
What was the reception when I came back?
right?
Baby killer, bags of dog shit being thrown at us, Vietnam bums, druggies, drunkards. Not, you know, we were the lowest of the low, and that's how we were treated.
That had to hurt.
Also, in the same poem
Yeah.
here, I don't know if you've heard that poem or
Well,
not.
the first time I met you, you had showed it to me,
Yeah.
and I remember that was pretty impactful. Now, you said that you captured some of your experience in Vietnam in a poem, and I was wondering if you could share that with us.
When I first realized I had post-traumatic stress disorder, of course at the time I didn't know what it was, I got, you know, God was very good to me, as I've said before. I'm a sculptor, a poet, a songwriter. I write short stories, a musician, a chef. At the time I couldn't do anything. I just sat on the couch and wept. And one day I was on my way to work when we owned the cafe in the Children's Museum, and I was looking for a place to drive my car into to take myself out. And I pulled over on the side of the road, and I said, what the heck are you thinking? You know, you've got a wife and 2 small kids at home. You can't do that. So I went to the vet center on Stevens Avenue in Portland. They hooked me up with a counselor. After several months with this man, very smart man, Bill Inman, after several months with him, he says, listen, you're a writer. Go home and write what you're feeling, and don't come back until you do that. So I wrote the Nam. You can hear the bombs dropping, the cobra's working out. The flames come down and light the sky like the breath of a dragon in the night. Traces flying, people dying, cries of death fill the warm night air. Get ready, boys. Don't make any noise. Don't fire till you're told. With gun in hand, you wait for your command. The devil owns your soul. With sweaty palms and tired eyes, you gaze into the night, trying to read the jungle by the light of a firefight. You take a deep breath. Your heart beats fast. You hope that it won't be your last. Someone hollers, incoming. You hit the ground. Now your heart begins to pound. I've never been a praying man, but tonight I think I will. I'll pray for darkness and silence and for the jungle to just be still. At 19 years old, you're on patrol. You've learned to use a gun and a knife. At 19 years old, you're out of control, but you've learned how to fight for your life. For politics, we took our licks. We went and joined the fight. Into Vietnam we flew, although somehow we all knew we weren't fighting for our rights. People dying, mothers crying, sons coming home in bags. We tucked all this deep inside and buried it away. Little did we know we'd have to deal with it someday. They called us druggies, drunkards, and Vietnam bums. Did they forget we were their sons?
So you came back, you did the commune, you were on the commune, and then how did you make your way back to this community? Back to Biddeford, back to Maine?
From Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah, from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
When I lived in the commune, I was in Seattle.
Right.
I had to leave from the base in Seattle
Got it.
to go to Vietnam.
Okay. Yep. I got the sequence mixed up. So
Yeah, no, there's a little section of that. I kept coming home. And finally, I would turn myself in at the air base in Portsmouth. And finally, I turned myself in, and they said, "You're going." So they put me under 2 armed guards, 2 military police, and they escorted me to Seattle. And I got there, and they didn't throw me in the brig, but they threw me in a little lockup for a couple of days. And then I went from there to Vietnam, and I was going voluntarily anyway, you know, but I just took a little too much leave time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when the military was behind you, your military experience was behind you when you came back to Biddeford, what was the transition like?
I came back. I gave my mother all of the pins and medals and all the BS that they give you. I got rid of my uniforms. I put the military behind me. I hooked up with some of my musician friends, Peter Carrier, Paul Gardner, John LaHoo, these people. John got back 1 month after I did from Vietnam.
John LaHoo.
Yeah, he's gone now.
Yes, I know John.
I'm still trying to get over that.
Yeah.
We were very close. We had a duet that we did for about 3 years in the summer. Mm-hmm. And I got back into music, and I got with the bands, and I just forgot about Vietnam. You know, it was done. It was behind me. I forgot about the military. I served my time. That was it. I was done.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about some highlights. I'm sure you can't share every single thing about being a musician, but what are some of the highlights of your life experiences with music?
Well, you know, as I said, I got back with these guys. We put a band together. We were always together. We were inseparable. Peter Carey and I, if you saw one, you saw the other. We were never, we had an apartment at Hills Beach. We hung out at St. Francis College most of the time. I always say we went to college for a year and never attended a class once. We used to hang out at Freddie Dorman, what they used to call the city there, right up the road. And we rented Remar's in Biddeford, a men's clothing store. He had two daughters, Nancy and Bonnie, and Bonnie, it was kind of an upscale men's clothing store, and Bonnie turned the basement part of it into a head shop, and eventually the whole thing. But Mr. Remar he owned the building, so there was a hall upstairs that I don't know what the organization was that used to use it, but he let us have it, and we lived in it. That was so cool. We had a big stage, a high stage. At the time, I had a set of drums. Peter had a set of drums, so the back wall was full of drums. There was a little room off to the right of the stage with stairs going up to the stage. We assumed that was kind of like where people waited to go on, And we took and put a hammock in there and turned that into a library. There was a kitchen, a full kitchen on the other side of the stage. So I used to do most of the cooking. And when you walked in, there was a room, there was a hall, and the attic door, and then there was another room that was a twin to this one. It had a bathroom and some coat racks. And we put two twin mattresses in there, and Peter and I stayed in there, and Paul and his girlfriend stayed in the other one. And we all lived there. And then when college got out for the summer, our friend Billy Shoemaker came and pitched a tent at one end of the hall. He nailed it to the floor, and he lived in there. We used to ride a 10-speed in this hall. And all local musicians used to come up and have jam sessions and stuff. It was amazing.
This was right on Main Street?
Yeah, right on Main Street. Yeah.
So that would have been like what year?
1971.
1971?
Yeah. I got back March 15th of 1971. I went in June 3rd, 1968. Got back March 15th, 1971. So in 1971, we put about 10 years worth of living into a year. It was amazing what we did. We still can't figure it out, how we did all that in that amount of time. But we were the house band at the Hawaiian Hut in Portland from, let's see,
what did you call yourselves? What's the name of the band?
The band was, it started out as Jason, which was Paul Gardner's son's day. Him and Ruth just had a baby, and it was his name. We called it Jason, and then we got tired of that and called it Orchid. We played there. We played Shelley's in Portland. We played in Waterville at the Chez Paris. Played at the beach. Everybody played at the beach. Back in the day, Old Orchard Beach was the hub of the music industry around here.
Where did you play in Old Orchard?
Everywhere. You played at the Bastille. You played at the Wishing Well upstairs. The Bastille was also named the Tidal Basin, the Tidy Bowl, we used to call it. There was the Sandbar. There was Whitehall. There was ample places to play back then. You didn't have to think about it.
What did you play?
I was a percussionist.
Uh-huh.
And then later on I was a percussionist. I was mostly a singer. I'll show you that here.
Sure. Now, did you guys write any of your own stuff? Was it
Yes.
mostly covers?
Yeah, John, the band was, in the interim of the band, it was Peter Carrier, Paul Gardner, John LaHoop, Roger Lozier, and myself as manager. It came down to where I had to let Roger go. And in order to continue to get the pay that we were getting, I grabbed the tambourine and jumped on stage. I sang one or two songs, and I used to sing Sleepy Time a lot by the Cream, and I did percussions. We got 4 days a week, Thursday through Sunday. That gave us free rooms in the Sheraton. It gave us free meals in the tavern restaurant upstairs. It gave us free drinks in the hut and $35 a night per man. Not good money cash-wise, but when you put the whole package together, that was a hell of a gig. For 4 days a week, we didn't have to worry about nothing, you know? And just fill in the other days. You know, back then you could play 7 days a week if you wanted to, you know? Then later on, it was John, Peter, Paul, myself, Larry Wooten from Portland, and Dave Kelly from Portland. Now it got to be a big band. That's when it became Orchid, big time. And periodically we had Bob Phillips from Saco come and fill in on harmonica, or Bob Wooten, Larry's brother, would come and play harmonica from time to time. So, and we played everywhere back then. And
So how many years did it, so I'm assuming this was your primary...
I started playing music in junior high before I went in the military. We formed a band out of this building. I went to junior high school here. And I can't even remember the guys that were in that band. But I was about 12 years old at the time.
So...
I still have the first tambourine I ever bought.
Really?
From Murphy's Music.
Huh.
You can't hardly play it anymore. All the tangs are rusted through.
So after you got out of the service, this was your primary occupation. How many years was being in a band your primary occupation?
My primary occupation, it was just that and a little bit into 72. I got married in August of 72. When I got married, I knew that being in a band and being married was not going to work. To be perfectly blunt, I was pretty promiscuous. You know, it was very easy being with a band to score. You know what I mean? And I mean, in the 70s, it was easy anyway, but being in a band, forget about it. So I knew it wasn't going to work if I wanted my marriage to work. But I always had a music room in my house. I always jammed. I always owned equipment. And my house, you know, I lived a very bohemian lifestyle. My house was always full of musicians and artists and poets and writers and people who were into the arts. So, you know, my kids grew up with that. You know, and I'm not going to lie, I mean, I've been doing drugs since before I went in the military. And I've smoked my entire life, you know. I just had to quit a couple years back because I'm a 2-time lung cancer survivor. Now they tell me I have cancer in my right eye. So I don't do anything anymore. I don't even do edibles. I'm not, they don't, I had my run. It's good, you know. But, you know, you used to tell, oh, that's incense.
So you...
Because it always emanated from Dad's music room, you know, whenever the guys would come over. But I've been involved with music my entire life.
So you got married, and let's say you mentioned children. You have children?
We were 13 years married, and we didn't think we could have kids. And one Thanksgiving, we had about 30 people coming over for dinner. And she started feeling nauseous and stuff. And we weren't sure what that was about, so after the holidays we took her into the doctors, and they did a sonogram, and beep, 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 you know. What the hell is that? Because they thought maybe she had an ovarian cyst or something. And I said, is that what that cyst is right there? And they said, no, that's a child. Well, so after 13 years, we had our first son. They said when he was born, and he was, I think probably 3 or 4 months premature. He spent the first month or so of his life under double billy lights in an incubator. And the only way we could touch him was with these gloves that went into the, and they said, take your miracle baby home. That's it for you guys. And 3 years later, boom, she got pregnant again. So we had a second son. So after 30 years of marriage, she did a disappearing act and left me and the boys, and I've raised them ever since. One is now 40, the other is 37, and they both still live with me. They've come and gone and come and gone and come and gone, and now they're back.
So,
neither one of them ever got married
and
or had kids.
So music was a big part of your life, and then I know you've done some other work as well. You've talked a lot about being a chef. Is that a line of work that you had after being a musician?
Not after, during. I was an executive chef. I've owned several businesses in my life. From the first one was from school, from night school. I met a gentleman named Nick Koktashenko, and he was had a business. He was running out of a carpet store in Wells, and he was doing inlaid floors, Formica countertops, and carpeting. And we would get to talking in the hallway during breaks, and he says, man, you got a hell of a gift of gab. He says, if you're interested, I've got this business. I'll take you on as a full partner. You handle the people in the business and I'll teach you the installation part. And I did. And until, we had the business going so well, we were going to open a store over the Captain's Landing in Kennebunkport. And he had a girlfriend who liked to spend money faster than he could make it. It was a new microwave, a new washer and dryer, I knew this, I knew that. It was like, Jesus Christ, Nick, you got to slow this woman down. And he came to me one day. I was 21 years old. He says, we're going to have to go bankrupt. I said, bullshit, I'm not going bankrupt for your girlfriend. I says, I'll tell you what, you keep the business. I went down to the bank. I had my name taken off the bank account. I had my name taken off of all the books. I said, there, it's yours. Go ahead, run it into the ground. I don't care. So I departed from that, and I started another business just for something to do, doing carpet shampooing. And all these hotels on Route 1, you go in and you do one room and you work your way through the hotel, and when that's done, you start over again, you know what I mean? And you do that to 3 or 4 hotels, you get a pretty nice little business going. So I was able to employ myself and a couple of guys. Then I got a job at Udy's Tire. I managed to work my way into a foreman in the first year. In fact, if you can recall, they used to have a metal thing outside that went from one floor down to where they would load the trucks on the side of the building. Do you remember seeing that? It was like a big enclosure. It was rollers. Well, they gave me the 4th floor, and I hired a crew. I got to hire my own crew. I had my brother. I had Rick Perrone. I had Harry Applin. He was from New Orleans. He was an artist. I had 2 or 3 other friends, all artists, all musicians. We so you know, I had my own crew, and that set of rollers on the side of the building, that was my idea, because they would send the tires up, and we would weave them into whatever size they were supposed to be, and then they would send me up the orders. We would grab a cart, we would fill the cart with the order, take it to the rollers and roll it. There'd be a truck parked down there, and somebody would catch the tires on the bottom, and we would feed them out. When we first put that rollers up, it wasn't covered. Tires would get halfway down, they'd stand up. When they hit that guy at the bottom, it would nail him right to the back of the truck. So I worked for Ray Petrie, and he said, "Boy, this is not working. I don't think we can make this work. We're going to hurt people down there. We are hurting people down there." I says, "Well, why don't we just cover the damn thing?" You know, talking about the rollers. I says, when the tires try to go up, they'll hit the roof of that, and they'll lay right back down. They won't be able to stand up. And he said, "That's a damn good idea." So that's what we did. And I worked there for a couple of years. Yeah, I worked there and then when I got done with that, I worked at Marymount for a time. I did a little bit of traveling in between. We went to Pennsylvania a few times. We went to Florida a couple of times. I don't think my wife ever traveled as much as to when she got with me. You know, I've always been on the road. Mm-hmm. That was in my blood. I grew up with that, you know.
So what kept bringing you back to Biddeford?
Home. This is home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know. When I worked for FMI, I think this was back in the late 70s, I think. I worked for FMI not too long after they got open, I guess. And you had to sign a waiver with them saying that because this pitch that we used to impregnate these parts, you couldn't go in the sunlight because you'd get skin cancer. And I've had several spots removed from my face already. So I worked there through the winter, and when spring came around, I quit. And my wife and I lived in a little cabin on Smith's Wheel Road. And I walked in 7 o'clock in the morning because I had the skeleton shift, you know, the night shift. And I told her I quit. She says, "What the hell are we going to do? We don't have any money. How are we going to live?" And I said, "Just relax." So I went downtown, of course, spring. Everything's getting ready to open at the beach. I went downtown. Crest Motel was looking to have some paint work done. So I went and talked to, I think Sid Sclair was the owner of the Crest at the time. I talked to him, and I contracted the job for $4,500. I hired my brother. I hired Rick Perone. I met Rick Perone when he was 15. He was my brother's friend. He's been with me ever since, on and off. I went to my cousin and I said, "I need to borrow some money." He says, "What do you need?" I says, "I don't know. Come with me to Sherwin-Williams and we'll figure it out." I went and I bought what we needed for supplies. My friend Mark Winslow, Smokey, as people know him or knew him, had a van for sale. I said, "How much?" He said, "For you, $750, and I'll throw in the ladder rack that's on top." I said, "That's absolutely perfect. I can't ask for a better deal. And I want to borrow that ladder out behind your garage right there." He said, "You SOB." Threw the ladder rack on the truck. I said, "Now you want a job? Come on." We went down, we did the job. I paid him what he needed for the van. I paid my cousin back for the materials. We made $38,000 that summer. This place where the Lincoln hotel is. We did work in there for the guy who had it at the time. I also worked in there when it was Biddeford Textile. Smokey and I, Mark Winslow and I, ran the dye lab. We used to make all the colors for the Corfam. I ran that business until my first son was born. And I told my wife, that's it, I want to go back into the culinary field. And I saw that Danny's Deli was looking for somebody. And I went down and talked to him and talked my way into an apprenticeship. And I was in the culinary field after that. I owned the cafe inside the Children's Museum for 2.5 years, my wife and I. We called it CJ's Cafe, Chris and Justin, that's my sons. They had full run of the museum, of course. I had a sandwich shop called A Ladle of This, A Ladle of That, in Saco, right across. It was right between the police station and the fire barn. There was a little building in the parking lot there, behind that cafe there. And I rented that building for practically nothing. I put in a stove, I put in a counter, I put in a sandwich unit, refrigeration, cooler. We went to work. It had a bathroom. That's all we needed. And we started making gourmet soup, sandwiches, chowders, and I ran a hot special every day.
Wow.
And we did that until she left. And then my brother owned J.R. Flanagan's. I was his chef for a while. But I've worked every place here as a chef. I did 2 seasons at Scarborough Downs. I did the old Cornforth House, the press room, the Wonder Bar, what's now the Cole Road Cafe. I did that. I did, of course, Danny's Salmon Falls Country Club, Portland Yacht Club. I cooked for Barbara Bush and the Ambassador of France's wife with an outfit called Catering Design, Catering for the Elite out of Yarmouth. So I got, that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to capture in these interviews too is what it was like to live through some important times in history. And on a more recent level, of course, we went through COVID. And I was wondering, how did that impact your life?
Most of that, I was in North Carolina.
Okay.
Being retired, because I'm 100% service connected with the Army, so I don't have to work. I'm retired. I've been retired for years now. So, it was easy because I own my own home. I had a beautiful house in North Carolina. I'll show it to you. We could order things from the supermarket and just go pick it up. We didn't have to go in the store. So that's how we did our shopping. And we just hunkered down like everybody else, I mean, I don't do a lot anymore anyway. I haven't done a lot for years. Back in the day, I left here in '05. I was with a band called Full Throttle. It was a Leonard Skinner tribute band. Sarah Libby was with the band, if you know who she is. She's a local musician that plays solo all over town. Grant Lane from Sanford, Garrett Green, he's gone now. He went a couple years ago. Kelly from Old Orchard Beach, he's gone now. A lot of the guys are gone. A lot of my friends are gone now. I just lost another one, Ray Sear, very well-known musician, blues man, hell of a blues player. Also played in bluegrass bands. It was COVID. I mean, we just got through like everybody else. You know, I just hunkered down. I didn't do a heck of a lot. When I left here in '05, I was doing karaoke shows with my friend and partner, Jimmy Thomas. He's gone now. He died just before I got back. And COVID got him. He was 56 years old. He had main track studios. And we did karaoke shows together. We performed together. And we worked the studio together. He trained me to be assistant production manager. And when we had recording sessions, he would run the board and I would run the computers. And we'd record people for whatever their needs were, you know. And we ran karaoke shows together. And when I went to Florida, I ran karaoke shows in Florida. And then when I left Florida, my brother was assassinated. After he was assassinated, that was it. I didn't do anything else after that. I just retired.
Your brother was assassinated?
Yeah, in Florida. He had a call from a friend who hid under the pretext that she needed a ride to go get something from her mother's house. So, and this was about 11:30 at night. And another time when the angel was on my shoulder, because if I'd have gone, we were on our way to a friend's karaoke show that night. And I had my sister with me, and him and his son were in his car. And when we got to the place where the show was, he parked his car and was standing there in the parking lot. And I dropped my sister off and I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to go tonight. I'm going home. Not like me. I love to sing. But I stopped by my brother and he said, what's up? I said, I'm not coming in. I'm going home. I said, I'm just, for some reason, I'm just not feeling it tonight. He said, okay, man, I'll see you tomorrow. And I started to drive away and I backed up and I rolled down the window and I said, hey. He said, what? I said, I love you, bro. He said, I love you too, man. We'll see you tomorrow. And if I'd have been with him, I'd have gone with him. So this person called him. He went to pick her up. It's about 11:30 at night. He stopped. He was in Fort Myers. Stopped at a stop sign. A 15-year-old Haitian kid pulled around the corner, pulled up next to him, and put 7 bullets in him. When I got up the next morning, I woke up to a phone call, and my sister said, Pete's dead. I said, what the hell do you mean, Pete's dead? We were just with Pete. She started screaming at me. She said, what don't you know? What don't you understand about Pete's dead? I said, all of it. You know, she said, well, turn on the news. So I turned on the news, and there was his car on the news. So Pete was gone.
So did that case ever go to court?
Yeah, I went to court. The kid got 7 years. Only.
Well, I'm sure that was very traumatic.
That was very traumatic, but it put me into an early retirement because I just didn't have it in me anymore to do that. So I still have all my equipment. I just stopped performing. And my voice went quiet until I got back here. I left Florida in 2013. I was there from '05 to 2013. My friend Ray that I told you about, him and his 2 sons were in North Carolina. He got transferred there. He was with the Navy Yard. And when they shut down the Navy Yard, they gave him a transfer to Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And then he got done there and he went to work for Lowe's, but they stayed in North Carolina. Wife and 2 sons. His wife died just before we went there. And when I was looking for a place to go, I said to the boys, you know, Uncle Ray's there along with the 2 boys. Why don't we go visit them for a while? So we took off to North Carolina in 2013. And he got married again. He found his sweetheart from when he lived here, when he was a kid, and she had just got divorced, so she came to North Carolina and they got married again. They're still married. Her dad was tiny. He had Twin City cabs, real big guy. I don't know if you remember the taxis back then, but that was her father. And in fact, her father bought his father's business, Eddie's Taxi. And I bought a house in a gated community. And it was funny because he tried to swear me off of doing that, and then about a month or so after they got together, they bought a house right up the road from me in the same community. And he already had a house there. But he kept that and gave it to his son.
So what year did you've been back in Biddeford now?
I got here back in 2020.
In 2020?
Yeah. So COVID was almost over
Okay.
when I came back.
Now, I know since you've been back, and that's one of the reasons that I connected with you, is you've been doing some volunteer work with the Biddeford Cultural Centers, especially like organizing the monthly musicians breakfast.
I started the monthly musician
You started the monthly musicians breakfast.
I hadn't seen Mark Hebert in about 40 years, and we got reacquainted, and he called me one day, and so he's as much responsible as I am. He said, hey, why don't you and I go to breakfast? And I said, fine, let me make some phone calls and see if anybody else wants to go, thinking of John LaHoo and Rick Perrone and some of those guys. And, I made those few calls, and they made some calls, and the next thing you know, we had about 12 guys. We used to meet at Maggie's up there when we first started. That's almost 2 years ago. So I figured that was going to be it, but we kept going, And everybody thanks me and pats me on the back. They said this was the greatest thing. And it's been going ever since, and now it's 24, 25 people, and it's not just guys anymore. Women are coming. People from both boards are coming, So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, So I think I'm very proud of that. That's, I think, one of the best things I've ever done is put the musicians' breakfast together,
And it's also amazing to see the response from the community at the annual awards.
I'm going to get a mention this year. Diane's going to give me a mention, and the breakfast. It hasn't been mentioned yet, but it's going to be mentioned this year. She told me, and I'm going to get a mention for starting it, which I think is apropos. Yeah, it's just grown and grown and grown, and I'm just as pleased as punch about that. It gives us a chance, and it was my intention to get together once a month, reacquaint ourselves with old friends and new. We chat, we swap stories, we reminisce, and we break bread. So once a month, we all look forward to going and being together, and I just think that's the cat's meow.
Well, I know that we have just scratched the surface of, so you've had so many experiences in your life, but I want to be respectful of your time. But is there anything in particular that you had been thinking that you wanted to make sure that you wanted to share, but it just hasn't come up in our conversation?
I think most of my work history we've covered. I did run a lumber crew for a year and a half in Orchard Beach when they started the new high school. We're the guys that were the first ones in there to start clearing the woods. And we did in Ocean Park on Temple Avenue. There's the big covered pines. Well, there was a I don't know how they called it. It was a camp. We blazed some trails for them through the woods. We made corduroy roads and bridges out of stuff that we cut down, natural bridges and stuff, and we blazed all those trails for them. That was an interesting time as well. And all the trees that you see on Main Street in Old Orchard Beach, and the benches, we put all that stuff there. We put benches in the park over there, but that's all tore out now. The park is gone. I don't know what they're getting ready to do with that. But yeah, that was an interesting time. I've done a lot of things. I've been a very lucky man. I'm a published poet, a sculptor, an artist, musician, a chef. God was very good to me. I have no complaints.
Wow.
If I went in the next 10 minutes, the only thing I would regret is the people I leave behind, because I've had one hell of a life. One that most people only read about in books, and I got to live it.
Wow.
And
is there anything that is there like one takeaway, one message that you would want people to walk away with after hearing your story?
You get one life to live. Don't waste it. Grab it by the gonads and run like hell with it, because it's the only one you get, and it's the only time you're ever going to get to do it. So do all you can. Learn as much as you can. My dad always told me, when you get to be a man and you're on your own, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Learn as much as you can, because the more you learn, the less chance you have of not having a job. I worked for the city of Saco for a time, and we all got laid off. Well, when we got laid off, I had just got married, and I went to the men's shop in Saco, and I bought some clothes to get married in. Now I couldn't pay them back. Going through the ad in the paper, local men's store needs help. I went to send resume. I hate that. I went to the journal office. I said, can you tell me what men's store is looking for help? No, you have to send a resume. Okay, fine. I started with the men's stores in Biddeford and worked my way to Saco. When I got to the men's shop, I owed this guy money. I said, are you the men's store that's looking for help? He says, we certainly are. I'm talking to the owner now. And I says, well, here's the deal. I owe you some money. I charged some clothes I haven't been able to pay for because I got laid off. You want to get paid? By all means, I want to get paid. I said, good, hire me. He hired me. I worked there for 2.5 years.
That's a good strategy. It worked.
It worked, but that's how my dad taught me to be, I've done everything from a lumberjack to a chef. I've been everything in between. I was a door-to-door salesman. I worked for Pizza Gala Construction Company when they built the main mall. All the planter boxes you see up against the building and the sidewalks that go around it, I was a form carpenter. I laid all the form for all that stuff. Then when they put the new sewage plant in Saco, I went to work for that construction company as a form carpenter, and we started laying form for their foundation. And then I got hired with Diamond Construction when they put 95 through to Florida. All right, and I was working on, now I'm doing bridge construction, laying form for the bridges. And when I quit that, I hitchhiked to California. Went to work for Gaffer and Sattler. I've done everything.
Wow.
I've had a hell of a life. I've done it all. And if I were to say something to a young man today, it would be exactly what I just said. Don't waste your life. Go out there and grab it by the gonads and squeeze the hell out of it. Get all you can, because you only get one time to go around. And when it's done, it's done. There's no looking back.
Well, I certainly thank you for taking the time to share the highlights of your life with us, and I look forward to capturing the pictures that go along with this, so that we can share that with the people that check out your story too. So,
Sure.
So thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the clown, Emmett Kelly.
Thank you.